Okay, we are back with our fourth episode of the Move Worthy podcast with Jenny and
Lauren.
And today we are going to discuss whether or not it's a good time to buy. Is it a good time to buy? It seems the question that everyone always asks. How's the market and is it a good time to buy?
Yep.
So what do you think? Like, I know what I think.
I think it just depends on your circumstances. Everybody has a reason to buy. Everybody has a reason to sell. I think there are multiple situations that are going to have a completely different answer.
Right.
Are you looking to sell your house because you have a bunch of equity in it and, you can make a lot of money? Did you buy way before 2020 and then refi and have
sitting
pretty and have a really low interest rate? In that situation, I can answer that two ways. I can say, what does it look like to what you are going to purchase if you sell?
Right.
Are you going to purchase something that is going to require a 7% interest rate? A $10,000 homeowner insurance policy, a $5,000 flood insurance policy. Where are you going and what is that going to look like?
That's true.
Compared to what you're selling.
There's so many factors.
There's so many factors. If a buyer came to me, if a client came to me and said that they wanted to sell and they wanted to buy, and I would just say, hey, if you can find, let me back up. If a client came to me and said they wanted to sell and they wanted to buy and they purchased before 2020, they refied in 2020, so they have a 3% interest rate, but they're sitting on a crap ton of equity because, let's face it, our home values have not dropped significantly since that time.
No.
So they could potentially make a lot of money, but where are we going?
Right.
Where are we going?
The plan?
What's the plan? How much are we going to spend? Does whatever you're interested in buying, does it have an assumable mortgage? Does it have super high insurances? So, if somebody comes to me without a reason to buy or sell, like divorce or job transfer or something of that nature, I would probably say it's going to be determined on what it is that you're looking to purchase.
What do you want?
Right.
Like, what's your why?
What's your why?
What's your why? Why do you want a new house? Is it necessary? Can you stick it out another couple years or not?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what does that look like? I think everybody's reasoning is different.
Yep.
And like you said, divorce, like, you have to sell or you might have to sell.
Yep.
And then they might buy two houses.
Right.
Husband and wife might buy two houses. So in that sense, they need to buy. Do they have a family they're still trying to raise? Are they trying to stay close to each other? Like, there's a lot of factors in there. And then you've got two people shopping in the same area with the same issues.
Yeah.
Which what we're facing here is insurances.
Yeah. Especially in this area.
That's been the deal breaker.
A huge.
And I think when we say, is it a good time to buy, it depends.
It depends. Absolutely.
It definitely depends.
And I think it's our job as agents right now in the market that we're in is to get down to the bottom of that. Figure out what it is that they're looking for, where they're looking to go, what they're looking to do, what their main ultimate goal is. And then crazy, but shop it. You really have to shop it. Yes. These days. We're quoting insurances up front, sometimes even before showing a property.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy.
Especially in certain areas. And
yes.
You would be surprised the higher insurance rates. I figured the further out you get from the city, the lower it might be, and that's not the case.
Mm-mm.
I guess it depends on which direction you're going.
Yeah.
My last couple buyers was a first-time home buyer.
Right.
One was, I guess what you'd call a move-up buyer. Mm-hmm. They bought a bigger home for their expanding family. Mm-hmm. Made sense. What about your last couple buyers? What were their situations?
So I mean, my last couple of buyers have been, mostly first-time home buyers, which is the most difficult right now, because it's very shocking for them to see the interest rates, for them to see the insurance quotes. It's like,
so
holy
expensive.
guacamole. Holy
Yes.
guacamole. I mean, first-time home buyers can't do today what they could have done a few years ago.
No.
They just can't afford it.
No.
I mean, it's tough.
And sometimes not that they can't, that they don't want to. And I so agree with that.
Yeah.
I would tell my clients all the time, like, it's great, like, you're approved for this much, you can afford this much, but do you really want to?
Right.
And the ones who tell me no, I mean, I'm just like, that is so smart. And the ones who want to push it to the brink, I'm like, it's at some point, it's not my place to give my opinion on those types of things, but I would always just say, make sure you're comfortable with this, because this is a 30-year mortgage.
Right. But is it really a deal breaker for the people that have to buy? Like I said, the job transfers, the divorces. I really don't think it is.
Yeah.
I think we are in a market, like I said, where agents really need to shop. They really need to find a good location where there's affordable insurance. And as far as interest rates go, that's not a deal breaker in my mind
I don't think
as an agent, because I've seen it go up and down, up and down, up and down. And while I think that if you're in a position where you have to buy, I really do feel like there's going to be a point in time where they can refi.
Yes.
And they can get a lower interest rate. But, I mean, these buyers are not stuck in a situation like in 2020, where these people were paying sometimes $100,000 over the asking price. Well, guess what happened to those people? Now they're in a house that could potentially end up upside down.
Yeah.
If the values do drop some, or if their insurance rates hiked up significantly, you're paying a mortgage on a house that's not necessarily worth it. Whereas now, I think you're in a better situation if you have to buy, because you're buying a home for what it's worth.
What it's actually
and
worth.
You can actually work with that interest rate.
Yes.
When you're stuck in a house that you paid $100,000 over asking, and most of them paid that $100,000 in cash because you couldn't finance it because it wasn't appraising. So I think you're in a better situation. You can work with that interest rate. You can't work with a house that you pay too much money for.
Right. And those people, gosh, if you bought in 2020 and 21 and you need to sell today, it's
a tough place to be.
I mean, that's where the conversations come in. Like, hey, what is your situation? Especially when we meet new sellers that are buyers. Like, hey, when did you buy? What does that look like? Yeah. And where do you want to go? Yeah. Do you want to buy a bigger house, a smaller house? Like, all of those things. I think, it's crazy. Oh, I was going to say, had something on my mind. The inflated prices. Yeah. So right now, I think we're in a spot of where the numbers probably should have gotten to. Yeah. We did for a while still have those inflated numbers, and people were still buying them. They have come down a little bit, but not significantly, like you were saying. No. Not like everyone thought, maybe. No,
they thought that everything was just going to plummet and home values are going to be dirt cheap.
Like, I'm just going to wait and buy when the market crashes.
It's not doing that.
I don't think it's going to do that.
No.
I don't even think not anywhere close to what we saw before. I mean, we have seen some fluctuation in the numbers, and we're going to see some foreclosures hit the market, not to a point where it's going to be massive foreclosures really pulling down the sale market.
I agree.
So what about the people who said they were going to buy after the election?
I know. Everybody
thought the interest rates were going to drop.
They thought we were going to have this huge dip in interest rates, and everybody was going to be ready to shop, and it's exactly the opposite. We actually had a hike. Interest rates.
And we had some buyers pull back.
Absolutely.
We had one of my listings, they said, you know what, the interest rates from 2 weeks prior had gone up. We're just going to hold off for a little bit. I mean, I'm hoping that we see in the next 2 to 6 months some relief there, just to pull some people off the fence, but we also need insurance relief, I think.
And I think another thing that buyers agents don't really consider is there are a lot of mortgage companies out there that are offering assumable mortgages. So if your agent is doing like I said, agents have to really be shopping and doing their due diligence. But, if a buyer's agent is doing that and they're, asking these questions, asking the sellers if their mortgage is assumable, I mean, that could be a serious game changer for a buyer.
For a buyer?
If you're going to buy a house that had a 2.9% interest rate and you can assume that,
right.
Granted, most people have to have the cash for the difference because you can only assume what their balance is.
Correct.
That's a big deal. That's a huge deal.
Can you get a mortgage for the other half?
You can.
So then you could assume their mortgage and get your own mortgage.
And then have a second mortgage.
Ah,
yes.
Okay.
You absolutely can.
I think that's a game changer for a seller too. My house.
So if you only have to fill a $30,000 gap and you're only paying, you're paying 7% interest, but only on $30,000 compared to $300,000. I mean, that's a huge difference.
Right. I mean, how many buyers could open up? How many opportunities could open up for a seller to
offer that
a pool of buyers?
Yes.
If you have an assumable mortgage.
Yes.
And you see a little bit of it. Like I've noticed like maybe 1 or 2 listings in our area.
But I don't think listing agents are doing their job of finding that out because
like, hey,
this mortgage is assumable. They have a 2.9% interest rate. Like that's huge.
Right.
That's huge.
I know I have a lot coming up, lot listing coming up. And that was the first question I asked. Hey, is that mortgage assumable? Because they probably bought it a few years ago with the lower interest rates.
Right.
And even though it's not a house, could that be assumable?
Yep.
Local banks around here, are they offering that?
Yeah.
You're right. I think questions. We get all excited when we have a buyer or a seller, and maybe we forget to ask the important questions.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why?
Where are you going?
What options?
What options?
Like, what can we offer a buyer?
Absolutely.
All kinds of things. Yeah, I definitely, that would bring us back around to buyer agent.
Oh, and that's a whole
Are you offering that?
Yes.
We don't necessarily agree to offer it up front, right? You and I both feel the same way about that.
Yeah.
But could that help you sell your house?
Right.
I mean, I never really looked at the numbers at the bottom of the MLS sheet before I showed a house, but I know there are people who do.
Uh-huh.
So we'll leave that at that. What do you think? We talked a little bit about this last time too. Like, what do we see in the coming years? Like, definitely some more foreclosures. Well, let me back up. I posted something the other day on our Facebook page that mentioned buying a home. Right now is probably the best time to buy a home in the next coming years. Like, we're in a great time right now, I guess, because of where prices are. They only predict them to get higher. Like, I think we'll always see a fluctuation in the market, but everyone's really predicting the prices of homes to continue to rise.
Values.
So today could be a better time to buy. Again, what's your reason?
Yeah.
But also buyers markets. Like, I posted in that on Facebook that our city, Luling, is in a buyer's market.
Yeah.
We just touched on a buyer's market. We have over 6 months worth of homes for sale on the market today. St. Charles Parish as a whole, not so much. We're about in a balanced area, and I think that's just because certain areas might move faster than others.
Yeah.
If you would think Luling might be one of them, you might think Destrehan might be one of them, but we actually have some of the longest sit times for houses on the market.
Yeah.
So I said the next 2 to 6 months is probably going to be, we are going to see some changes. Yeah. Some maybe significant changes. Either the market's going to pick up a little bit. I mean, I feel like this year's kind of been rough. Yeah. So I'm hoping that it can only go up from here.
From here, right.
But I do think the next 2 to 6 months could be a telltale of what
the next few years are going to look like.
years are going to look like.
I do think interest rates are going to come down.
Yeah.
I do think that's just as an economy as a whole.
As a whole, like just has to.
Yes, it has to.
They've been up for so long.
They've been up for so long. They just have to come down.
Well, since 21, they started to go up.
Yeah.
So 2021, it's been a steady increase since 21. We're about to be in 25. You're right.
I know.
Kind of goes back to what my client said. 26 is going to be the
26
market.
is going to be the year.
The good market, the good year. But I think this year is going to be a good year. I'm predicting, some...
I think this year is going to be the transition year. It's going to be on the trend up.
Gotcha.
In the upward. And I think she's probably right. 2026 is where it's really going to...
start to... Well, and that makes sense. So when I went back and I read that article, I went back, I looked at the data. I was like, when was the last time we were in a buyer's market? It was 2017.
Wow.
2017 was a buyer's market. And I remember being excited to go to listing appointments and telling them, you can list your house for this much more.
Right.
Like, numbers are shrinking. The number of houses on the market is shrinking. The demand is there, and this was 2018, and I was so excited. 2019, like, you can get this much more for your house. The numbers are trending upward.
Right.
And then, of course, boom.
Then it became a seller's market.
Like, explosion.
Right.
But, 2017, last buyer's market for quite, probably it started 2010.
Yeah.
So 7 years of
right.
pretty much a buyer's market.
Right.
2018 is when it shifted.
Yeah.
And then we've been there since.
Yeah. Then, 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like you're right. 25,
this year is going to be the transition
year, and then we start building back up. So back to our main question, is it a good time to buy?
I think for the next 12 months, and right now, and even for the next 12 months, it's going to be, what is your situation? What is your why? Do you have the right agent doing the right research, asking the right questions? That is going to be the answer, my opinion, the answer for the next 12 months.
The next 12 months. What is your reasoning?
Yep.
And look, when we say good agent, like, we're not just raising our hands to show houses, and we're not just raising our hands to put signs in the yard. Like, we really care about start to finish. What do you need?
Yes.
What is the purpose? How can we help?
What can you afford?
How many quotes do we need to get for this? Looking forward, when we talk about flood insurance, what does that full risk premium look like? Are you figuring that into your numbers?
Yeah. Because it might be $900 today, but it could be $5,000 in a few years.
Right. And do you plan on being in that house for 10 years?
10 years, yeah.
If so, we need to figure that out. Is everyone, that's one of the first things I look at when I see a flood deck page.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what's the full risk? And then I'm making sure I'm telling my client.
Yeah.
The last one, my last buyer, we looked at that number and we figured it in. I was like, this is what your mortgage could look like.
Yes.
If and when you get here.
Yeah.
Now, if you sell before, or you pay your house off and you elect not to carry, there's some options in there, but for the most part, those are the questions.
Yeah.
It's not just...
Or is it in an X flood zone? Just because it's in an X flood zone does not mean it has a cheap full risk premium.
The full risk premium is still like $5,000.
It's crazy.
In an X flood.
So if you're in an X flood, are you willing to consider not carrying flood at some point?
Right.
We can carry it now because we can assume the policy that's in place, and we can pay, you can pay $800 a year or $900 a year, but in a few years, are you prepared to drop that flood policy?
Like, are you comfortable with that?
Are you comfortable with that? Because if not, this is what it's going to look like.
Right. We are in South Louisiana. I would never
advise.
Recommend. Like, it kills me when I see listings that say, you don't have to carry flood insurance. I'm like, why would you say that? I will let you decide if you want to carry it. I'm going to tell you what the risks are.
Yeah.
And the risk versus benefit options that you might have. But I would never say, oh, you don't have to carry it here.
Remember
just take my license away now.
You remember that phenomenon? I'm going to call it that because it was just crazy. But the river flooding in like the
and was it Mississippi?
No, it was in Louisiana. It was like
Oh.
Right outside of Baton Rouge area.
Oh, 2016.
Oh my gosh.
All the rivers.
All ex-flood in that area.
Yes.
All of them. Nobody had flood insurance.
Nobody carried flood. It
And
hadn't
all of
flooded
it hadn't flooded in decades.
Yes.
And all of a sudden the rivers overflow and every single house is underwater.
Yes.
I mean,
Ex.
crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I think the ex-flood zones get the most flooding anyway.
I agree.
Knock on wood, my house has never flooded. And we're probably the most flood-prone spot.
Yep.
I would imagine.
we're surrounded by swamp.
We're surrounded by swamp.
Yeah.
We've never flooded.
Yeah.
But other houses in ex-flood zones have flooded.
And see, you're not an X. You're
I'm in an AE.
Or an AE.
Yeah, I'm in an AE. Yeah. I have to carry flood insurance.
Yeah.
As long as I have a mortgage.
So crazy.
So, no, I have a rent house on Gaston Street is in an ex-flood zone. And we elected not to carry flood. After 2.0, the rates went crazy, and we'd remodeled it before, and we figure, worst case, we're going to be pulling some sheetrock. Everything's tile, maybe some cabinets. But so we took that risk. We elected not to carry it. Every time Luling gets a bad rain, I'm worried.
Right.
Like, is the water going to go into my,
Yeah.
But we've been lucky. It has not yet. My mom lives right around the corner, so I'm like, hey, what do the streets look like?
You almost have to weigh your options. Okay, well, if I'm going to pay $5,000 a year, and the odds are I could potentially flood every 10 years, how much money do you have to put into it to make the repairs if it did flood? Right. Kind of situation. Do you rather let your money just sit with these insurance companies or in your bank?
Right. Correct.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
So, in general, I think it's just that in the market that we're in, it's going to be situational. I don't think any agent or any lender or any title attorney can say, yep, now's the right time to buy.
It's a great time.
Nobody can say that.
No, I don't think so either. I can't honestly just say, yeah, it's great. It just depends. And look, we won't get into it today, but renting.
Yeah.
Versus buying in today's market, today's climate. What's the pros and cons?
Maybe that should be our next topic. Next week's topic.
So we'll probably touch on that because you and I both deal with a lot of rentals. We
do.
See that market firsthand. So
Yep.
I think that's a good idea. All right. Well, we are gonna
cut
it. This is the Move Worthy podcast with myself, Jenny Lindley, and
Lauren Jones.
And together we have the experience to move you forward.